The Empire Strikes Back, Part 1. Now, in this passage of scripture that we're looking at today, the title is The Three Wise Guys and the King of the Jews. Do you ever wonder what the Bible means for today? What does it matter? Well, I think we're going to see today why this is important. What was written, why it was written, to who it was written, but also, if you take that forward to us, what that means for us. So today we're going to look at the three wise men, a little bit about King Herod, the birth of Jesus, and how it gets in a bunch of trouble. So stick with us to the end, and I'll be also looking at what it means to us today. So let's start with the text. Now, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who has been born, the King of the Jews? For we've seen his star in the east, and we've come to worship him." Now, there's a lot of trite sayings like wise men still worship him and whatnot, but this is a story that is going to get real ugly real fast. The first thing that we have to look at is Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea. That's important because the King David was also born in Bethlehem. Why is that important? Well, to Matthew, Jesus being the king in the line of David was a big deal. If you remember in the beginning of this study, Matthew basically makes up 14 generations and then another 14 generations and then another 14 generations. They're not actually 14 generations, but he squeezes them into that mold. And the reason he does that is because in Hebrew, a number also would have a verbal connotation. And 14, 14, 14 is Matthew repeating David, David, David. Jesus being David is a big deal because as David came to uproot the King Saul, the king of the Jews, so now Jesus, born in the same place, is the new king of the Jews that's coming to replace Herod, who is quite a shitty king. He's a king that is enslaved to Rome. He is a king that forces the will of Rome onto his people. He's very corrupt. He's a tyrant. And as we'll see going forward, he is power hungry like you wouldn't believe. So in Bethlehem, the new David has been born with the goal of replacing the corrupt king. So that's the Bethlehem part. These three wise guys, which were not kings, they were not even magicians, they were astronomers. Remember, astronomy even today is looked on with very dubious eyes. But these guys were astrologers from Persia. And they come into the scene in Herod's court. They ask Herod, "Where is the King of the Jews born?" Who was Herod? Herod was the vassal king to Rome. He was put in charge by Rome to keep Jerusalem and Judea under control, paying their taxes, being good citizens, and not to revolt. Well, that's a big deal for the Roman Empire. So Herod is that king. He is the king of the Jews. And these Persians come from the east and they say, "Hey, we've seen this star, we followed this star, and we want to know where the king of the Jews is born." You could imagine that Herod is going to react very strongly to that. But because he's a devious guy, he doesn't react in front of these astrologers. "Where is he who's the king of the Jews? Because we have come to worship him." These wise men from the east were looking to pay homage, to pay worship, to express their wonder and awe at a new king that was over all of Judea. That's a really cool thing that's going on there. And Herod is going to react very poorly to that. Remember, Herod is power hungry. He wants to have his son inherit the kingdom of the Jews. He doesn't want any new upstart to come and take his place. So that's essentially what this story is. What does it mean to us, Rev? What does it have to do with me and my life today? I would say to you that this becomes important because these magi, these astronomers, they came without knowing what was going on in the politics of the day. They came innocently and said, hey, where's the King of the Jews born? Without understanding that this tyrant King Herod was in charge. When we act in today's world with all of the corrupt kings, I don't care who they are, right? You can say Putin, you can say Trump, you could say Biden, you can say any of the kings of today. These people have power, and we have to act shrewdly in order for us to actually go and worship in the way that real King of the Jews has commanded us to do. The only way we actually worship Jesus is by caring for the poor, caring for the marginalized, visiting people in prison, caring for the sick. This is what Jesus calls us to do. And Jesus basically is going to create this new kingdom that doesn't place power at the center. This new kingdom that says those that are least are first. And he tells us that looking into the eyes of those that are marginalized, we will find him. That's worship. Worship isn't singing Jesus is my boyfriend song. These kings came to find Jesus and worship him. But what they didn't realize is the power structures of that day were going to cause a major amount of suffering because of their visit. And that's what's going on in this passage. The empire strikes back, being that always the imperial forces are going to try to destroy the true king, the true empire, one that does not ask people to kill for it, one that says, I will die for the people, one that says the economy is meant to be for those that need it, not those that crave it, that greed motivates. We need to walk into that new kingdom, and ultimately that's what worship is. I'd invite you to do that. Now, I would suggest that you hit the button to watch the introduction to Matthew, because we're looking at Matthew with a different emphasis. And the introduction to this study is going to explain that to you. So please go take a look at that. And man, it'd mean a lot to me if you talk to me in the comments, if you press like, if you subscribe, and if you're at all interested in this understanding of the word and its application in our lives. Just join me Mondays in Matthew, every Monday. And if you'd like to hear stories about how my wife and I have tried to do this, come Sunday Stories. And that is me basically telling stories about how I try to live this whole thing out. So, with all that in mind, just remember, Rev loves you.